Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Hughie Fury is the new British heavyweight champion, taking the title from Sam Sexton by 5th round KO stoppage. So it was quite a good performance from Fury, but the real news out of this is Hughie Fury will not defend the belt. He's going to drop it. He's going to try pursue an eliminator fight to fight for a world title, but more on that later. So first to the fight itself, we had Fury in the opening couple of rounds. He was snapping that jab. He was looking fast and sharp. He was moving around the ring as he does, and he was generally controlling the action. And Sexton, he tried to bully Fury into the corners, into the ropes a couple of times, but Fury really didn't take any damage from it, and he did take those opening couple of rounds in my view. Round 3, Fury controlled the action throughout this round, and there wasn't a huge amount landing, and Sexton was very low volume. He seemed to be content to let Fury pop that jab, and he really looked like he didn't have much of a plan in that third round and another Fury round. And the commentators, they were saying perhaps Sexton was looking to let Fury sort of wear himself down, you know, through his movement, through the volume of punches that he was throwing. But in those opening rounds, it didn't prove to be that effective. There were some signs of aggression late in the round from Sexton in round 3, but it wasn't enough, and it was completely a Fury round. And round 4, this was actually where Sexton came on a bit stronger, and he looked pretty good. It was a pretty competitive round. But, and it's a big but, the last 30 seconds, Fury took over. He landed a big right hand, and it was a very good right hand. And Sexton, he was dazed and wobbled, and Fury followed up with another right hand and dropped him. It was clearly a 10-8 round, and that was right near the bell. So heading into the 5th round, you did wonder, did Sam Sexton have his legs under him? But Sexton, he tried to come in, be aggressive. He tried to land some of his own shots, but Fury was there countering with a very good right hand, and it dropped and ultimately stopped him. And I must say on the stoppage, when Sexton, he got up and he looked like he was ready to continue, sort of, you know, he was up and ready at about 9. But Terry O'Connor, the referee, he waved it off, said Sam Sexton was in no position to continue. So in terms of the stoppage, I mean, I didn't have too much of a problem with it, but I did think, well, actually, Sexton, he looked like he could have been ready to continue. Whether he would have actually made any indents in what was happening, I think that's a very debatable question. Fury, completely controlling the fight, ultimately stopped Sexton. And in terms of the actual improvements that we've seen from this fight to the Joseph Parker fight, clearly Hughie Fury was more aggressive. There did actually look to be a little bit more snap on those jabs. Some of those early jabs looked like it was really rocking Sexton's head back a bit. And that right hand, he's been working on it clearly. He was really sitting down on it and really putting some stank into it. And Sexton, ultimately, it was too much for him. And in terms of the, we'll move to the post-fight here before I get onto a few other things. Hughie Fury, he credited Peter Fury for the improvements. He was saying that, you know, without Peter Fury, his trainer, his father, you know, he couldn't have done this in this fight. And the interviewer wasn't really interested in hearing that, wanted to move it on. Fury continued that he was so relaxed in there, he could have fallen asleep. I was confident tonight that all I needed was one shot. I worked on my right hand over Christmas, and it was a boxing masterclass. And those were Hughie Fury's words. And he continued later on saying, whoever has those belts better believe I'm coming. I'll hold them for a long time. I'm a vicious fighter now. Gonna get a mandatory position, and they can't duck me. So it moved on to Mick Hennessy, Hughie Fury's promoter, and he was asked about, well, where does Hughie Fury, after this performance against Sam Sexton, where does he fit into the scheme of the pack of British heavyweights that are running around right now? Because there's quite a few, and quite a few good ones. And so he was asked about Joyce, Chisora, White, Dubois. And Mick Hennessy said, well, Hughie Fury, he's proved he's leading the pack by far. He's come on so much as a fighter. His desire is much more, and he's worked on his power. And we're now seeing a brilliant young heavyweight. So the interviewer did sort of come back to try start ask again about the likes of Joyce and Dubois, because you could see where the line of questioning was going to go. He wanted to ask about the likelihood of Hughie Fury facing the likes of a Joyce or Dubois. So Hennessy, he cut him off and said, all due respect, they're novices. We've got a plan. We've got a plan to progress his career, eliminators and final eliminators. And then he went on to say that this freshly crowned British title heavyweight champion, Hughie Fury, is going to drop the belt. He will not be defending it. As Hennessy put it, we're going to move on. And Peter Fury, he echoed those sentiments, saying, we're going to move on. We're going to try get an eliminator and try get him into position for a world title. And just to round out the comments from Team Fury, Hughie Fury ended by saying, I'm going to be a world champion. So there's a bit to unpack there in terms of the actual comments in the actual fight. So the fight performance, it was a pretty good one. He actually did what he needed to do. And I think if he hadn't have looked impressive against the likes of Sam Sexton, who was a British-level domestic fighter at best, and that's nothing against Sexton, but that is his level. You know, he'd worked all his career. He'd got to the title finally. He's, 33, 34. And Hughie Fury was always expected to beat him. It was always going to be, in many fans' minds, a one-sided affair. The question was, how good would Hughie Fury look? And would he be able to stop Sam Sexton? And he made a claim before this fight he was going to drop and stop Sam Sexton. And that's exactly what we saw in this 5th round performance. And there were shades of the Joseph Parker fight. I mean, all the movement, it was still there. You know, the jab and that sort of thing. But it looked like there was a bit more meat on the punches. And clearly, Fury, he was looking to engage a bit more than he did in the Parker fight. But then again, Sam Sexton is not Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker clearly has a few more tools in the toolbox than a Sam Sexton. So it didn't look like there was that same level of respect with Fury having to avoid the shots coming back at him. So Sexton, he tried valiantly, but Fury ultimately too much for him. But I did like to see those improvements with the aggression, because he did look in spots. I'm not saying he was completely aggressive all the time, but in spots he did look to be more aggressive than he did in the Parker fight. And obviously he probably knew after a point that, you know, he had it in the bag and he wanted to look good and wanted to make a statement. So from that standpoint, he did make a statement. He's told all the other heavyweights in the division, look, you know, I am someone not to be trifled with. And if you walk onto my right hand, you know, you better have a good chin, because you might be in trouble. But in terms of the what next, I mean, I was a little surprised to hear them say they were just going to drop the belt outright and not even pursue any of the other options. But I guess I'm not totally surprised that Fury is dropping the belt, because prior to this fight against Sexton, Peter Fury, Hughie Fury's trainer and father, had indicated they had no interest if the British title was mandated to fight for the Commonwealth strap, which Joyce holds, that they wouldn't have any interest in that fight. They basically said, look, Joyce, you know, he is at a point in his career, he's done great things, sure, but he's still early point of his career. He needs to work up to fight someone and deserve a fight with someone like Hughie Fury, who's gone through the hard yards. I mean, make of that what you will. Some people will say that he's ducking Joe Joyce, but in terms of that what next, what they've indicated is they want to get into an eliminator or a final eliminator, get into position for a world title. And I get that, but the thing is though, Hughie Fury is not currently ranked by any of the sanctioning bodies. So I've gone and had a look at the rankings. He slipped out of all the rankings entirely. So it's not just as simple as saying you're going to get into an eliminator or a final eliminator, because at the moment you're not in the rankings, so there's nothing to eliminate from. Whether this win over Sam Sexton is enough to actually crack into one of the IBF, WBO, WBC or WBA, it remains to be seen. But Fury, clearly he's going to have to take another fight or two before he's in a spot for a final eliminator. It's just not going to happen. So even off the back of this win, he may make his way into one of the sanctioning body's rankings. But, you know, that's not going to guarantee him a shot immediately into a mandatory position, or even a final eliminator, or even an eliminator. So he's got some more work to do. And they were a little bit vague and opaque about that next step, beyond saying we want to get him into an eliminator or a final eliminator. But you'd have to ask yourself, this next fight, they have to keep him busy, they have to keep him active, they have to try to get him into the rankings, who will they fight against? It's probably not going to be someone that's any better than Sam Sexton. And if it is, it's probably someone that we're quite interested in seeing. And if that's the case, they may actually be a risk. I actually think we'll continue to see another 1 or 2 fights against similar level opposition to Sam Sexton, British European level, some guys that he can look good against, build a little bit of buzz, build some hype, build a bit of profile, because right now Hughie Fury's international profile, let alone his domestic profile, it's not the greatest. And some of that comes down to his style. A lot of people just don't want to see that sort of jab and move style, because it's not exciting, especially for the casual fan. But we did see tonight against Sam Sexton that he was willing to engage himself a bit more on the offensive side, and he looked pretty good doing it. That right hand looked pretty good. But we have to just moderate our expectations about, one, the power of the right hand, because it was Sam Sexton, domestic level guy, but also we have to moderate our expectations about who he may face yet. I mean, who do you think it could be? Realistically, is it going to be anyone good next? I wouldn't have thought so, because I think they will just go for someone where they can just keep, ticking things over, working their way up the rankings to that ultimate shot. I mean, it's a pretty well-worn path, have a few soft touches along the way. Clearly, they've already ruled out a number of targets that he could be facing, but I think some of that is more on the risk side of things. Because I actually think a Joe Joyce-Hughie Fury fight would be a very good fight, and I think Fury would have a decent chance. And Dubois, I actually think that's probably too early for Daniel Dubois, but putting Fury in there with some big punches, some guys that are actually going to eat those punches from Fury and still be chasing him down, it'd be very interesting to see, because I think it would put Fury under pressure, and ultimately it'd probably be good for his development. But I guess it's that whole sort of risk versus reward. And they can see a path back here where Fury doesn't have to do too much to get into an eliminator, but he's got to get ranked. And, hopefully it's not too much bottom of the barrel stuff. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.